But is everybody else, do they
Yes.
wait to be called on to
Yes.
unmute themselves? Okay. Also, does it appear to everybody else like my picture is like sparking, or does it look fine? Okay, if it looks like I'm glitching, let me know. I may just sign in from my phone instead of my computer because I don't know what's going on, but to
Yeah,
me,
you are glitchy.
Yeah, it's glitchy. Yeah.
it is glitchy. All right.
In the
Well,
Matrix.
I'll get the meeting started, and then while others are sharing, I will sign on on my phone so that I'm not distracting us with the glitching for the evening. It's 7:02, and we definitely have a nice group of attendants at the moment. So let's get started. Miss Delaney, are we recording it?
Recording in progress.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. It is Wednesday, August 7th, and this is a meeting of the Public Safety and Transportation Committee. I am the chair of the committee, and I am joined by our vice chair, Councillor Downs, as well as members of the committee, Councillor Greenberg from Ward 1, Councillor Lucas from Ward 2, Councillor Wright from Ward 3. I don't see Councillor Block yet. Councillor Downs, who I already introduced, is from Ward 5. Councillor Bixby from Ward 6. I'm from Ward 7. And I know that Councillor Lipoff has a conflict tonight from Ward 8, so he won't be joining. In addition, I see we've been joined by a number of councillors who are not on this committee. And that includes Councillor Kelly, Councillor Farrell, Councillor Maliki, and I believe that's all for now. Did I miss anyone? Okay. We only have one item on the agenda tonight. Let me get the docket number. I had the docket number up here. I don't know where it went. Councillor Downs, do you happen to have the docket number up in front of you? Of the, oh, here we go. Actually, yes, I do. 201-20.
Sorry.
Is requesting a policy discussion review and possible action related to parking on street and in municipal lots. We have discussed this, at least in this term in this committee, on two prior dates, April 17th and June 5th, and we held it on both occasions. We have talked about some different research projects that different members of this committee have volunteered to take on. And in a second, I'm just going to ask if anybody wants to share anything on work that they've done. And then otherwise, we asked Mr. Kozis to join us tonight, and we're really grateful for your willingness to participate on an August Wednesday evening to go over the current state of parking permit programs that we have throughout the city, because that's come up a lot as a topic that members of the committee are very interested in, to really understand how we've attempted to use permits in other parts of the city, how that's working, and sort of add that to the brainstorming pot of ideas, so to say, that we have been talking about. So before I go to Mr. Kozis, let me just ask if there are members of the committee who want to share anything that they have learned from our last meeting, the first week of June, to today, and any updates. And I know the Councillor Block has done some research, but he's not here, so I can't call him quite yet. Does anybody want to share anything? Okay, I don't see any hands. So Mr. Kozis, let me bring it over to you. And if you could help us understand the array of parking permit programs we have in the city right now, how those are working and how they're administered, I think that would be really helpful. I'm going to turn it to you for a second and turn my video off and sign on the phone so that you guys don't have to look at this glitching anymore. And I really appreciate it. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I do have a presentation. Let me just see if I could share. Okay, good. And from beginning. Okay. So this is about 14 slides. It's a description of the various parking permits that we have across the city. Maybe I'll take a break every once in a while to see if there's any questions. But so from the beginning, this was before 2013, we had really just a series of different streets across the city. There were more than 25. There were maybe 30 or 35 different individual streets where if you lived on that street, you would be able to get a permit if approved by I guess traffic council or city or the board of aldermen before traffic council existed. And so for $25, you would be able to go and get a permit for the year. If you lived on one of these streets to override whatever the parking regulations were on that street and really park all day. So since 2013, the number of streets really that are individual streets across the city with permits has decreased. Some of them were absorbed into bigger programs. Some of them just actually requested to be removed. So let me just move something on my screen so I could see. Okay. All right. So any of these permits, it's a $25 annual fee set by the city council. But then in 2013, really, I think it coincided with around the time that Newton North High School was being rebuilt and moved from the Lowell Avenue side to the Walnut Street side. In 2013, City Council voted to allow Traffic Council not to keep, approving individual streets to have a permit, but to create neighborhood districts, right? To be more comprehensive and to create a set of streets together that are contiguous. They had to be contiguous streets that together would create a more comprehensive approach to parking. So that was back in 2013. And right around then was when the Newtonville Neighborhood Parking District was created. This was our first parking district that was created. It's the biggest district. It was really created, again, when the high school moved over to Walnut Street. We wanted to make sure that neighbors would be able to park on their streets, not have the streets filled with student cars from across the city. So each permit is street only. If you live on Kirkstall Road, for example, you would get a permit for $25 a year to park on Kirkstall Road, or Sheffield Road's only for Sheffield Road. And so that's how we created it. Again, $25 a year for residents who live on any of these streets to get a sticker, and also free visitor permits that are transferable if you have a guest coming. Also, part of this program included parking permits for a limited number of Newton North High School students. They're capped at 170 permits per year through a lottery system. I think the lottery for this September is already just beginning now. City Council started out with a $25 per year fee for the Tiger permits, and then not too long ago raised that to $60 per year for the school year. Also, part of this program is we have permits for Newton North High School staff themselves who are not parking in their own individual lots, but they're parking on Elm Road, which is a public road. And we also have permits for senior center staff. Right now they're temporarily, of course, in Newton Highlands, but when they come back, they'll have again their permits to be able to park on Walnut Place. So this program has grown over the years. Once in a while, a street comes and asks us to, remove them from the program. We haven't had any changes in the past 2 years, but I do think that we're going to have one more street come in our September meeting on Phillips Lane. So that's already scheduled for our next meeting in September. So, what's really nice is that we could easily respond when a street comes to us with a particular problem. We can add it onto an existing program like this if it is contiguous, because that's a requirement. Okay.
I think we should. Oh, sorry. I don't know how to do this and not reverberate.
Okay, I was just gonna go over this
Mute
one
one
last
of your,
slide and then
Becky,
ask for
Becky, mute
questions.
one of your mics on one of your devices and that should do it.
Okay, I thought I had. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, after you go over these notes, I think you should pause just right after the Newtonville part, because there was
Yes.
quite a lot on that map, and I expect that we're gonna have questions right after that.
Right. So I just wanted to cover this one slide. If you look on the city webpage, and you look up the Newtonville map, we have also, or like on the back, are these notes. This whole set of notes and the map gets sent out every year by the Newton North assistant principal to all the parents and to the students. So it's really this set of notes is really targeted toward them so that the students know exactly where they're supposed to be parking, where they're not supposed to be parking, not on campus, really not in the neighborhood. So that's all I wanted to cover for Newtonville. But I think this is a good time to pause and see if there's any questions about this map.
So I just want to start off by talking conceptually. Obviously, as you described, this came out of a particular need around the high school. The residential permits in particular interest me in terms of streets that have opted in and why it was necessary to issue a parking permit program that permitted them to park on their own street as opposed to members of the high school community who quite obviously we needed to manage their parking. But can you talk a little bit more about, for example, if you're a resident of, Greylock Road or Kirkstall Road, what the impetus really was to include those residents and how popular a program it is. I mean, how utilized really a program it is by the residents themselves.
Well, I guess I could say that the program did start out smaller. We didn't know how far out the students would park, right? We did not want all the students to be driving into school. Of course, we want them to walk or take the bus, right, or bicycle to school. We know that some students do need to drive. So, but we didn't want to unnecessarily regulate too far away from the school. So we did start out sort of closer into the school. And, as the years went by, we heard from, for example, Dexter Road, or Trowbridge Avenue, which are very, very close to the school, that the regulation that we had in place for them, which was a 2-hour limit, 8 to 4 on school days, was not good enough because there were so many activities that were, in the evening or even when it wasn't a school day, that their street was just completely filled up with cars all the time. I think our goal is to, they're public streets. We want to be able to share the streets, right? But we don't want to make us create a situation where we have so many non-residents parking on a street that the residents who live there have no use, right? So we for Dexter Road and Trowbridge Avenue, for example, we got more, a higher level of regulation. So now on those streets, you need to have a permit to park there at all times, right? And then I remember, Kirkstall Road and Upland, sort of almost like off the map, you can see, because they came later. And, they come to the city council or they come to traffic council or call us at DPW or someone else. And they're complaining that they can't get their trash picked up, or they don't have the use of their street and they want to be able to opt in. So it goes through the regular traffic council process. At that point, we do take a look, we monitor to see how severe the problem is, and then we are able to respond by adding it into the district.
So essentially, the thinking or the mechanism is there is no parking allowed on those streets, but for one of these permits, pretty much at all times. So these residents are opting for the $25 per year permit in exchange for not having a street that is otherwise parked up by the high school community. Does that,
Well,
is
like
that
if you look at
accurate?
so the streets that are closer in general are more restrictive. You see a lot of red on the map. Maybe a little bit further out in general from the school, though. So all those streets that you see in red, it's not that you can never park there, but it's a 2-hour limit, right? It's a 2-hour limit, 8 to 4, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on school days. So these are all on school days on
Okay.
this map, right? So if it's the summer, anyone can park anywhere. This is really completely responding to the school, the students, right?
And
Um,
how do you feel it's working?
I mean, in my opinion, it's working very well. We know when it's not working because we start getting complaints from one street or another street. Um, to me, it's working when you stop hearing complaints from the residents, and you feel good that you're solving their current problem.
And then from an enforcement perspective, and I do see that we have colleagues from the police department on here. And while I'm thinking about it, I want to thank you all for a great National Night Out yesterday. And I saw a lot of members of the committee there. So it was really nice to be there. I was really glad a lot of our colleagues were able to make it. From an enforcement standpoint, how is it, for lack of a better word, policed? Is it complaint driven or is it regularly monitored by either parking enforcement personnel, school personnel, or police officers?
So it's both. It's complaint driven when someone's violating more than a certain amount of time, and the parking control will drive by their area of patrolling and check on the school area, Newtonville parking plan, and the other neighborhood parking plans. So we're not headhunting. That's not the issue. We're just going by, making sure everyone obeys it. Example would be on Gay Street, when we first did this back when David started this and we assisted. There's parking on both sides, and we couldn't get a fire engine or ambulance by, so we restricted it to one side. So it works. The neighborhood has less problems, there's less complaints being called in. So to answer your question, it works both ways. Complaint driven if it's really a bad situation, and just a normal everyday drive by to make sure everyone's in compliance.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to call you Officer Babcock for a second, just to ask you what your current title is, because I seem to recall that there was a promotion in there, but I don't know your
It's all right.
correct rank right now.
It's sergeant, but that's okay.
It is Sergeant. Okay, Sergeant Babcock. Can you also just take a quick second? I and other members of the committee who were on PSNT when Counselor Downs and I started on this committee back in 2008, know you and have participated in a lot of traffic discussions, but we have some newer counselors who I don't know if they know you and your role. If you could just give 2 seconds on that.
Sure. So I was in the traffic bureau back in 2009, 10, all the way up to 13, 14, 18. And then I get transferred back to patrol, and now this past year I'm back in the traffic division. So I'm the second in command to Captain Devine, and we do an array of issues that involve traffic and enforcement.
Thank you very much, Sergeant. We have a number of hands from the committee. So let me start with Counselor Greenberg, followed by Counselor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Kosis. So if a resident has a permit, I'm assuming that they still have to abide by the winter parking ban, correct?
Yes, the permit does not override any other regulation. any
Okay.
winter parking ban or any like parking near fire hydrants or driveways or anything like that. It only overrides the posted parking regulation, like a 2-hour limit on school days.
And if we were to remove the winter parking ban, would this program still be in effect? Would it still be working well, or would there be a change?
No, I don't think there's any relationship.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Chair.
I forgot to mention one thing before and I realized that I can't. I don't think there's a way to raise my hand when I'm sharing my screen, I've discovered. So I forgot to mention the Tiger permits. They're not allowed on all the streets here. They're only allowed, the students can only park in certain areas, right? They can only park in the area shown in orange, right? On Hull Street, 2 sort of small areas of Lowell Avenue down by, I forgot the name of that park right now. The park that's down here and Elmwood Park up here. We used to allow parking for Tiger permits right near the staff lot on Lowell. That's now a pickup and drop off area. And we are continuing to allow the Tiger permits in the Austin Street lot without paying the meter. That's an ongoing traffic council trial, right? So for now, we do have enough spaces available for the 170 permits. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thank you. And if you want to try to just wave your hand in the air or just gently interject, given that you're our featured speaker tonight, please feel free to. With the shared screen, which I think we should leave up, I can't see everybody's squares at one time. So without the hand raised electronically, it doesn't bubble you up to the top of the list, so to say. So just let me know if you have more to interject. Counselor Downs and then Counselor Farrell.
Oh, I thought Counselor Wright.
Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Wright. You took your hand down and then I didn't.
Oh, I
see it
didn't.
anymore.
Oh, I think it came down, maybe. Okay.
Counselor Wright, I apologize. You're right. Counselor
Okay.
Wright and then Counselor Downs and Counselor Farrell, you'll be after that.
Okay, so you have 170 student parking slots. Does that sell out every year? And what happens for the other kids that have to drive that don't get a parking permit?
So it's managed by the school now. They have the lottery. I do believe that they eventually sell out during the year, not all at the very beginning. But my understanding is that they do sell out as more students get driver's licenses and apply. I don't think that they distribute all 170. They do keep, I'm not sure how many, 10 or 15, I think that they sort of lend out as needed if someone, maybe they have a temporary disability or some particular problem. But maybe by the end of the year, they all do sell out except for the ones that are, just temporarily lented back and forth.
And then how many, is the 170 includes the permits in Austin Street or no?
Well, it's 170 permits and they're allowed to park in any of the areas shown in orange. So of course they all try to park on Hull Street first.
Yes.
Because it's the closest and then that gets filled up. I think a lot of students come quite early to school just to be able to park on Hull Street.
Oh, they do. I know.
Yes.
My kids went to school and stuff, and oh yeah, that's the reason to get up early, to get a parking spot.
Right. And then if there's no parking on Hull Street, then you start seeing them on Lowell Avenue or on on the 2 sections of Lowell Avenue. There are students that park in the Austin Street lot. We know that there's a lot of available parking in the Austin Street lot, so we're never going to have a problem having enough parking for the 170 permits. Also, we know that not all 170 students drive every single day. So less than that.
Okay. My concerns, and so, everyone says, oh, there's a lot of space in the Austin Street parking lot. And it's because, and I've counted, 50 to 70 cars park in the Star Market lot because that's free. If at any time Star Market starts towing, because that's kind of illegal because they're not using there, and forces people onto the street or into the Austin Street parking lot, it may become an issue, and then especially when the senior center opens too, you know, there will be a lot more people coming into Newtonville. I think it will be a problem. And, you know, because I've done with Lagerbots and we meet at 6 a.m. at you know, one of the coffee shops, and, you know, right when they open, and, you know, the Star Market lot is empty. There's nobody there. And within, you know, a couple of hours, you know, it's like I said, I have counted 50 to 60. So I worry about in the future, you know, and with that lot. And have streets asked to be removed around the high school from this program?
So yes, for the first question, I do agree. We don't know what exactly is going to happen with the Austin Street lot once the senior center opens. We know that there's a lot of capacity right now. That's why we're having a trial. That's why the trial is continuing on. I do think that sometimes students or other people actually think that the Star Market lot is the Austin Street lot, right? And they park there thinking that they're parking in the Austin Street lot until they know better, right? So I think that we should continue with the trial to see what happens once the senior center opens. And yeah, so there was one particular street, I think it was Bullow Park. Yeah, that street, or maybe it was Upland. I think it was Bullow Park. They were in the program at the beginning, and then the residents petitioned to be taken out of the program. So they you know, traffic council complied and removed them from the program. And then they observed that a lot of students started parking there. So then they requested to come back into the program again. So they're in right now.
Okay, and so the parking permit is specifically for people who live on that street to park on that street. So having
Yes.
a permit wouldn't allow you to park on a different street. So
That's
it's only
right.
for that people on that street. Okay,
Right. And if you live on a corner lot, you could pick either street.
okay. And do you keep count of how many permits you're giving in that? Like the Back Bay gives out what, 12,000 permits and there's only 8,000 spots? Do you?
So we have to remember that the traffic bureau, so traffic council sort of creates and votes and approves each of these programs. And then it's the traffic bureau. They are really the ones that manage it. The people have to come into the traffic bureau for all of these permits to get the permit. So I don't know if they probably do have a list. I think if there was some problem, we would hear about it. If there's, you know, maybe a street that doesn't have enough room for everyone that has a permit. I have never heard of that happening.
That's more for like night parking, and we're not talking about night parking. And then do people get, for how many cars they have registered in the city, do they get that many permits, or do they ask for so many permits, or how does that work?
I believe they get, and Sergeant Babcock can correct me, I think that they get a maximum of 2 or 3 stickers. Maybe it's 3 stickers if they have 3 different cars. But then there's also, and there's, you know, each sticker is $25 a year per calendar year. But then there's also visitor passes. Every household gets 2 free visitor passes, right? That are transferable. So a lot, maybe more than half, I think, of the residents don't want to pay the $25 and they just come in and get a visitor pass for their street,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so just to clarify, you can get a visitor pass whether or not you opt to participate in the resident parking permit program. Is that right?
Well, I guess when you get a visitor pass, you are participating, but you're not paying $25 for a sticker. You're just participating with a free visitor permit.
And the visitor permit permits the same
Mhm.
hours?
It's exactly the same as the sticker, except it's not a sticker. It's a transferable cardboard placard that you need to remember to put on your dashboard. If you forget, or if your visitor comes and forgets to ask for it, you might get a ticket.
Got it. Okay. One other question about the permits themselves. Are they, the stickers, are they labeled with the name of the road that they're for?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So every sticker has, in this case, in this plan that we're talking about, every sticker has the name of the street that it's valid on.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Downs and then Counselor Farrell.
Thank you. I was just taking notes because David mentioned a couple of things that I hadn't realized as part of this. Part of the purpose of having Mr. Kozis in to talk about neighborhood parking districts is that we're kind of exploring what might serve the purpose of the overnight parking ban when that, as may be the case, may be repealed in a couple of years. We want to have something, some kind of program that might serve many of the same purposes, but be acceptable to the majority of people in the city. So, whether the Star Market parking lot gets used up in Newtonville or not in the future isn't really what we're exploring, but what we're exploring is what programs do we have in place? How much do they cost? What are the pros and cons of them? My question for you, Mr. Kozis, is how much time did it take to, and how much time on average does it take and staff effort does it take to establish a neighborhood parking district of this size or even of some of the smaller ones? And do they all have the $25 annual fee, or does it vary?
Well, it depends, right? So this very first one in Newtonville took a long time. I think it took 2 years to come up with exactly what we wanted to do. I remember working with, it was Counselor Albright was there, Counselor Linsky, Counselor, I think Johnson was here at the time working. We had many meetings in Newton North High School. It took a long time because it was the first time we did it, right? Other programs took a lot less time. There's a very small one that we're going to come to that could be done very quickly. So it really does depend. There's one that we'll talk about later in Newton Center that it didn't take that long to establish it, but it was a 2-year trial to sort of tweak it, right? So I guess the answer is it depends.
Yeah,
And
I'd
as far as
say
manpower, as far as you asked about manpower. So, I'm always really thinking about, okay, here's another program. We can create it in Traffic Council and then we're done creating it, but we're turning it over to the Traffic Bureau, right? And they're going to have to manage it. And so that takes staff.
I guess that's the follow-on question is what does the staffing cost us in terms of time and effort? I think we already determined that particularly since people come in for the guest passes rather than for the $25 stickers, there's just no way it's even covering the costs of operations. But maybe Sergeant Babcock, you could address a little bit of how much time it takes now to administer some of these parking districts.
And then just quickly, Sergeant Babcock, when you're concluded with your answer, I see Mr. Yo has his hand raised, so I'm going to come to Mr. Yo as well, and then back to you, Counselor Downs. So Sergeant Babcock, go ahead, please.
Sure. So the administrative part, not really that time consuming. We have 2 clerks in the office that when the people come into the station, we explain to them they have to fill out a form, make a copy of it. Either they give us a check or a money order for the sticker, or they get the free 2 passes. So Council Downs, I say maybe 5 minutes at the most. When we had the student tiger parking, it was busy. But now that the school took it over, we spend less time with the permanent park.
And now it's up to them, up to the administration of Newton North, and I'm sure that's an additional administrative cost for them. All right, thank you. That
Oh, well,
does it for.
let me
Sorry,
just
go
let Mr. Yo chime in and then you may have more. So Mr.
No,
Yo, go ahead, please.
absolutely.
Oh, hi, thank you. Good evening. I think without having any discussion yet about the overnight parking issues and a permit program, we have there's no way for us to estimate time for administration and enforcement. So I think it's way too premature to be, right now, we're talking about daytime restrictions and the programs that are in place. So, and how those get administered, a nighttime program and how you decide who gets them and all that. Your committee hasn't even discussed that. We haven't discussed that with the administration. So it's premature to really get our arms around that. So that's what we'd have to do down the road. So thank you.
Right, and thank you, Mr. Yo. I entirely agree. This is the whole
Okay.
reason we're going over this, is so that we understand what permit programs we have in place and understand that they may not work as an overnight program, but many of the things that the overnight program do, a permit program also does, even if it's only active during the day. In that we don't have cars that are left on the street. There are a couple up the street from me that they're just sitting there all summer. They'll probably be moved by the time the ban comes into effect in the winter, but they're pretty much full-time storage right now.
Yeah, we don't see a lot of that in the city. So it's not, we don't see that as a big issue here in the city. But again, I think we probably disagree on that.
I think it depends on your
In
neighborhood.
terms of enforcement and discussion, I think we got a ways to go before we get to that, figuring out what it would take and what it would cost, how many more staff, and to take care of it.
I
you.
entirely agree. Thank you. I'm all set.
Sure, thank you. And I do just want to remind everybody, a lot of my thinking in these different lines of questions is also about what we may do if and when our current overnight parking ordinance changes. But our actual docket language is about a review of parking policy related to on-street parking and parking in municipal lots with a much wider breadth in terms of related ordinances and permit programs. So that's actually why I've allowed a wider range of discussion, although to the point that Councillor Downs and COO Yo were just discussing, this part really, to my mind, is sort of a fact-finding mission of what are we doing right now? How is it working? Even if we're talking about a very small microcosm of broader ideas, we're all just trying to really understand. I mean, just looking at this one map, I didn't think we were going to spend 40 minutes looking at one map. But this stuff is obviously really complicated, and we have so many members of the committee and the council who haven't been wrestling with this with the number of years that others of us have, that I do think it's important to understand, what's out there right now. That said, we have 3 more counselors' hands up on this, and then I'm going to ask if we can let Mr. Kozis proceed, because Mr. Kozis, I don't know how many different programs we have to review, but I want to make sure that we keep moving. So let me take Counselors Farrell, Maliki, and Lucas, and then I'm going to see if we can go on to the next slide. Counselor Farrell, go ahead, please. We can't hear Counselor Farrell. Is he, or I can't anyway. Counselor.
I can't hear him either.
He's muted now.
Well, now he's unmuted and talking, but I still can't hear him. I don't know if others can.
Yeah, exactly. You might need to turn up your own volume, Counselor Farrell. Still not hearing you.
All right, I'm going to go on to Counselor Maliki for a minute and come back to you, Counselor Farrell. Okay, Counselor Maliki, go ahead.
You're muted.
I thought I just unmuted. Okay, now I'm unmuted. I was also curious, was there a cap on the number of stickers, I guess it would be, that a household could get if they had more cars, but it didn't seem like anyone knew the answer to that.
I think it's either 2 or 3.
And that could be on top of the 2 free removable visitor placards.
Yes, yeah,
So you could get 2 visitor placards plus 2 stickers if you pay the $25.
yes.
Okay, and does anyone have a sense of, I mean, when something is free, the only reason not to get it is, you know, you don't want to be bothered to go by the station and fill out the form, I guess. Does anyone have a sense of what % of residents on streets are, or what % of eligible residents are choosing to pay the $25, or even choosing to go get the free visitor placards?
I don't have the data of, how many they sell on each street, but I do know that quite a high percentage of people just get the free visitor passes and they don't pay the $25.
Okay.
I
And
just butt in for a second. So just so you know, a lot of people have driveways and they use their driveways more or less for the visitors that come to the residents, that they like the placards that are free. And they do come in,
Right.
fill out a form, and we issue the 2 placards.
okay, although I think in maybe some of, I guess I'm maybe thinking Lowell Ave, where sometimes with the new construction or special permits, actually, I think there's a big tear down on Kirkstall. There might be, something might be built with less parking or more units that didn't have the parking. My other question was, I guess for Sergeant Babcock, how easy is it to enforce 2-hour limits? Are you only writing tickets when something is called to your attention with a complaint, or are you sort of proactively trying to keep track of, has that car in that spot been there for more than 2 hours?
As I said earlier, I think also Grossman asked the question. We do both. So it's selected enforcement and then complaint driven. But you have to remember the ordinance is basically, we have to physically see the car there, the parking
Right.
control, or the officer. If it's a 2-hour limit, we put it in the notes or the machine and come back 2 hours later.
And it's got to be in the exact same spot. If they parked it on the street, but moved it and came back to a different part of the street,
Still, it's a street driven.
it is, okay, so it's the maximum of 2 hours on that street, or maximum of 2 hours on that street.
Either one side is no parking or the other side is 2-hour limit.
Mhm.
We don't do both sides because of fire engine or
Yeah,
ambulance.
okay, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Farrell, let me try you again. Oh, okay, you're back muted again. Try to unmute. Unfortunately, I still can't hear you. I don't know what your microphone is.
You could dial in with your phone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you might want to do that. Dial in with the phone. Okay, I'm gonna go on to Counselor Lucas. I think calling in with the phone is a great idea, actually. And then if you mute on the video but call in with the phone, then we can see you and hear your voice in a separate connection. Counselor Lucas, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kostis, quick question. You said at the beginning of your presentation, Phillips Lane has petitioned to be included in the Newtonville Neighborhood Parking Permit District. If Traffic Council approves that petition, would they be would their street be purple? Or would they be a different color?
Well, so I'm working on that presentation already for the
Yeah.
September meeting. So Phillips Lane is unique because it's a private way, right? But even on private ways, they could still become part of these neighborhood parking districts if every single resident, 100% of the street petitions and signs the petition to become part of the district, and they did. So that's why we accepted their proposal. It's a very, very narrow street. It's, so you really can't park on either side of the street. So it would show up as black on this map, which means no parking. But since they are part of the program, if they're approved to be part of the program, they would be living on a street that has no parking available. So they would be able to choose to have a permit on a nearby street, which would be Pulsifer or Clyde Street. And so I think that that would go a long way to solving problems that we've heard from the residents on Phillips Lane.
Yep, yeah.
But again, this has not gone through the traffic council process yet. And, we need to have the public meeting and hear everybody's opinions and then vote.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, they reached out to me, so I'm just briefly following up, and thank you for your answer, and back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Farrell, I'm going to try one more time. Did you call in? No. Okay. Let me know when you're ready. I see your hand, your electronic hand is still up there. When you're ready, jump and chat, jump and wave a lot. That I'll know. Mr. Kozis, why don't we go on to the next slide?
Okay. So here's the next slide. This is a map of Newton that shows where our neighborhood parking districts are located. We just talked about Newtonville. That was our first one. And now we have all of these. So we're going to go over each one of these in the next couple slides. I think that the key point here is that each one of these, you're going to see they're very tailored, right, to the specific needs of each village or each area. And so I think the negative is that we end up with a complicated system of different kinds of programs. But the positive is that we are able to respond to all the specific needs, which we know vary across the city. In fact, most parts of the city, you don't need to have any permit at all. So, and then we know how different conditions are in different parts of the city. So that's the good thing, is that we can respond quickly and in different ways. So here's our next village parking district that we created. This was in 2014 in Auburndale. And so this program really began when the MBTA started charging to park in the commuter parking lot, the Auburndale commuter rail parking lot. And also we had commuters that were taking the Green Line at Riverside parking and on some of the streets also in this area. So, we started hearing from residents that their streets are now suddenly filled with commuters that are traveling into Boston. And what are we going to do about it? So we created this Auburndale Village Parking District, which we see here, a lot of streets shown in red or in purple, similar to what we saw in Newtonville, where the residents would be able to pay $25, get a sticker or a permit to override the posted regulations. What's different here in Auburndale is that we created a new parking program or parking permit just for employees who work in the village. These are the areas shown in orange. So if you are an employee working somewhere in this area, you can pay $25, and then you'd get a sticker. Actually, I don't think it's a sticker. I think it's a placard, a transferable placard that has the name of the business on it, and you would be able to park in any of these areas shown in orange. So there's some long sections of reserved parking only for employees along Auburn Street in this area, along Central Street, and in a couple different areas. We just passed at the last traffic council meeting an expansion onto the other side of Woodbine Street on the north side of Commonwealth Avenue for the veterinary hospital located right there. So that is this district. We also, as sort of part of this district, we do have permits for staff who work at the Williams School to be able to park with their permit on LaSalle Street, down here in purple, and on Hancock Street. So this actually expanded onto, this is actually another part of the Auburndale Village Parking District. You can see it's contiguous because, for example, right here we're at Grove Street and Woodland. So it continues on Grove Street and Woodland down Woodland Road and onto these streets around LaSalle University, right? So again, these streets, residents are able to get a permit for $25. The students who live in dormitories are not eligible to get a permit. And over the years, different streets have been added in if they're contiguous, right? So Maple Street and Groveland, for some reason, they have not approached us to ask to become part of this district yet. I think it might at some point. So that's the Auburndale parking district. Maybe, do you think we should stop here and see if there's any questions?
So I think we should probably do a few of these now together and then
Okay.
take a whole bunch of questions at the end. And I know Counselor Farrell's working on dialing in, so we should be able to take his questions soon as
Okay.
well. So why don't you power ahead to the next couple?
Okay, so then the next one, this is a small one. I think Counselor Downs asked at one point how long it takes to create these. This was a fast one that we created. This was developed when the car school was there and being used as a swing space. So we had 7 or 8 buses that would come and transport the students from Ainger School or from Zervis and park up on Nevada Street. We actually had to close the street at different times when we had pickup and drop off. So we created this program, and then when the car school, I guess when the Horace Mann School moved in, we just changed the name to the Horace Mann School neighborhood parking district. And so again, $25 per year for residents. There are permits also for staff that they need to be able to park. I think in this case, it might be interesting to think about whether this program, maybe it's not needed anymore, right? So it's not a swing space school anymore. It's really a neighborhood school. And it could be that we're at a point now where maybe it's, just like all the other neighborhood schools, maybe in this case, it's inconvenient for the staff to have to get permits to park on Nevada Street or on Linwood, and for the residents to have to pay to park on their street. So I'm just throwing that out there that maybe this isn't a program that we might want to think about rescinding, maybe even, by the next summer before the school undergoes the reconstruction of the addition. And we can move on to the next one, I guess.
I think Counselor Farrell, is that you, 61784?
Yes.
Okay, so we're, after you ask your question, we're gonna have to figure out how to mute that call-in number as well, because there is some reverberating noise. But Counselor, why don't you unmute it for now, so Counselor Farrell can ask his question. Miss Delaney, I think we have to unmute.
I
think we have
am
to-
asking him
Oh,
to do that.
Okay, sorry. You're not able to do it yourself?
No.
All right,
Does that
Counselor
work?
Farrell.
Yes, that works.
Now we
Oh
can hear
my
you.
goodness. First of all, thank you all very much for your patience. And Mr. Kosas, I appreciate this presentation. I'm not a member of the committee, but I appreciate Chair Grossman allowing me to speak. I don't know whether you're going to get over to the Newton South High School area in this presentation. but I have watching what went on at Newton North. I have some concerns about Newton South, and particularly the Oaks Hill and Brown School area. In particular, it's my understanding that we're about to construct some solar canopies. And I wonder whether any consideration has been given to creating, wait for it now, a parking garage on the city-owned land at Meadow Lane and the corner right across from Oak Hill School. There's a huge 120 space parking lot. My concern is that once the solar panels go up, there will be absolutely no opportunity to think about perhaps a one-story garage that would be significantly helpful to the parking problem we have right now, and will be increasing in the future, and may in fact be some help if there becomes a continuing parking ban. So I don't know if this is appropriate for now, but I wanted to bring this to the concern as a concern. And if you're hearing a terrible reverberation, I'm sorry for this, but I thank you for listening.
Sure. So right now it's okay. Let's, Mr. Yo has his hand up, I think, to answer this. So let me recognize him. I don't know if Mr. Kozis wants to add anything, but go ahead, Mr. Yo.
Just very quickly, the answer, Councilor Farrell, is no. We don't see a need for that. The cost would be astronomical. We have much greater needs in this city in terms of capital investments in our schools in particular and other assets. There's not a need for a parking garage at that location. So yeah, parking is challenging at times. I think we come up with systems to deal with it, especially around schools. And the answer is no. I don't think we see any need to build a garage there. Thank you.
If I may just say so, I guess I would like to have a continuing conversation about this, that the one-story parking garage with the solar panels on the roof would achieve both goals, and even the third goal of having parking for residents if there is a continuing parking ban in the winter, or even an all year round parking ban. But I guess I would like us to have a serious conversation about that. I understand the cost. I also look at what we're talking about at Newton North and all of the problems that a lack of parking is creating. And I would hate to see these solar panels get created and established without having a greater conversation. I do understand the cost.
Yeah, we will be moving ahead with the solar panels. So we'll be happy
Not
to
for a year,
discuss
I'm told.
offline. Yeah.
I'm told that won't be for a year.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little while, but still that is the plan. We can discuss it offline at some
Fine.
point. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna have Mr. Kozis move ahead to the next point of discussion. So Mr. Kozis, let me turn it back to you.
Okay. So in 2015, we created the Waban Village Parking District. This was created when the Ainger School was constructed. There were some parking spaces for staff on site, but not enough. We knew that we needed to have some staff park on neighborhood streets. And at the same time, we also knew that these streets are very close to the Green Line, right, to the Waban station. So if we just had unrestricted parking on these streets, they would be used by commuters, and we did not want that to happen. We wanted the streets to be used by the residents who live there and by staff. So we created this Waban Village Parking District. The areas shown on this map, if you're a resident of these areas, again, you can get your $25 sticker, your free visitor permits. And then what we did here was we created, I think, 35 different, 35 non-resident permits in this area for Ainger School staff to be sort of divided up onto the different streets. So you can see in this chart, not all 35 staff were parking on Beacon Street. They were sort of sprinkled around. And so this program expanded a little bit over time down here, and then it also shrank. It used originally, the program extended down Beacon Street over to Metacomet, and then we ended up putting bike lanes on Beacon Street, and we removed parking, and so we removed those areas from this Woburn Village parking district. And we can move on to the next one. This is the Newton Corner parking district. This one was developed just before COVID, really. It began as a small district with, I think, just 2 streets. And then during COVID, it expanded. So these streets in Newton Corner, we have to remember we have a very frequent, good public transit service, a bus, the 501, and we used to have the 503 as well, that operates up Tremont Street and then onto the Pike and into Boston. So that's really excellent public transit. And so as a result, over the years, many of these streets came to Traffic Council or to the Board of Aldermen before Traffic Council existed and asked for parking restrictions, like a 2-hour limit or something, so that their street isn't completely filled with commuter parking. And so, you know, we had a lot of these restrictions in place in Newton Corner. But then during COVID, you know, people, of course, they're home. They need to be able to park longer than 2 hours. So that was a problem. They were getting ticketed, and they wanted to have a way to park longer than the posted restriction. So we did create this Newton Corner parking district. Again, it's the same $25 fee for residents to get the stickers. And at the time, we were thinking about, you know, we do have great bus service in this area, that we want people to be using the bus to get into Boston, but not everybody in Newton lives close enough. So we started to even think about, well, maybe we should have a commuter permit program. There was just a few discussions about that, and we don't have one. That never was created. But we thought about that when we were creating this Newton Corner parking district. And we, you know, as we were approving it and creating it, we did think, let's reserve some number of permits. And so you see it in this box on this slide for non-residents, so that if we do create a commuter permit program in the future, we wouldn't have to go back and change things again. So we have this sort of on the books without any program, any commuter permit program available right now, but maybe in the future we would. So let's go on to the next one. So the next one is Newton Highlands. Again, it's different from all the other ones. This one was started out in 2019. So this one, you know, I'm sure the city council and, you know, staff here and, you know, other staff in the planning department would receive complaints from employees that worked on Lincoln Street that were receiving a lot of tickets, right? They were feeding their meters or moving their car around all day. We don't have very many long-term meters in Newton Highlands. I think we only have 5 long-term meters in Newton Highlands, because we know that if we have more long-term meters right next to the green line, then, you know, commuters would park there. The meters would not be available to the people who are shopping there or working there. So what should we do? We tried to think of how do we accommodate the employees that work here and the residents. And so we came up with this program. So similar to all the other ones, we have, if you're in the program and you're a resident who lives on one of these streets, you can get a permit to park longer than the 2 hours that are posted, or the 1 hour that's posted, $25 a year. And then if you're an employee that works somewhere in this village, you could get a permit. The city council decided that the permit would cost $200 a year for employees. And it's not like in Auburndale where you could park in any of the different areas with the permit. In this case, in Newton Highlands, we have a certain number of permits that are assigned to each, specific street, right? Like, so on Chester Street, for example, there's only one permit that's available. It's a way to share the street with the people who are working nearby. There's more permits on Lincoln Street. It's actually divided into different sections. So this program, I think it's worked pretty well. We do not sell out. The Traffic Bureau does not sell out of permits. I know that the permits that are closer into the village center, they go fast. And as you get further away, maybe on the other side of Woodward Street, they're available even at the end of the year. So that's what I would share for this parking district. Should we continue or take questions at this point?
Well, I was just going to add a clarification
Sure.
for my
Okay.
colleagues on this, because I'm quite familiar with it. This employee permit is like the Auburndale one where you get a transferable placard. So it doesn't go with the car, it goes actually with the business. And the owners give, where the people are renting the spaces, but own the businesses, are the ones who hand out the permits so that employees, so that they get used by employees who need the parking rather than it being assigned to a particular car. So I thought that was an elegant solution here.
So, Mr. Kozis, just to make sure I understand, and Councilor Downs to you too. So the red lines on Lincoln Street, once you cross Woodward, at the end of the year, we still have employee permits that are not taken up in that section?
Yep, that seems to happen every single year.
That's so interesting.
We do have a few businesses down here on Route 9 at Woodward Street, and we know that they like to park right there on Lincoln Street. So we know that a few of them are taken, but the people who are working in the village down here closer to Walnut Street, they don't find them convenient, I guess.
How far of a walk would you say that is?
I would say it's about 3 or 4 minutes. What would you think?
That was going to be my guess, but I'm waiting till
Maximum 5 minutes.
Right, I was waiting till we
Really?
get to the Newton Center one because that's been fascinating me lately too. So, all right, why don't we keep going?
Okay. So the next one that we have, and this is the most recent one, this is Newton Center. So this is different from the other ones again. You notice that each one of these is really different and tailored, like I said. So in Newton Center, we've all heard different complaints about parking in Newton Center among the merchants. We know, for example, the merchants on Union Street find that long-term all-day parking is inconvenient or unavailable. A lot of times they get tickets or they feed the meters. Although there are long-term meters available, right? But maybe it's a 5-minute walk and not convenient. So in this case, we went through a traffic council trial where, and this is totally different from the other ones, where we reserved a certain number of meters in the 3 lots, right? It started out, I think, being 30 meters divided between the Pleasant Street lot, Cypress Street lot, and the Langley lot. And so those were meters that were already there. And we put up signage at each one of these meters that said that you need to have a Newton Center permit to be able to access these meters Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And so if you're a employee who works anywhere in Newton Center, you are eligible to go to the traffic bureau, say that you're an employee of Newton Center, and get a permit. Those permits are free. There's no charge. And so you could get a permit, but you still need to pay the meter. The meter, we have 40, now we're up to 40 meters now in between the Langley lot, Cypress, and Pleasant Street lot that are, that you'd only have access to if you are showing your permit, right? So this was different from the other ones. We did a long trial. It was 2 years. We tweaked it. We've had some parking tickets that came in and were they 2 or 3 of them were appealed, and when we handled that in our division as well, the parking ticket appeals and hearings, and we're told that the signage was not so clear, so we actually changed the signage. Originally, it included they were reserved even on Saturdays, so that we did a lot of data collection, and we saw that they weren't heavily used on Saturdays. So we made a change during the trial period so that these meters are only reserved Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And, we saw that with the different tweaks that we put in, the rules were well understood. And, we did many counts and looked to see if the cars that were parked at these meters displayed their permits. And I think over 90% of the time they were. So we, eventually we went back to traffic council and voted to make this trial permanent. So this is what we have now. I think that anyone who goes to get a free Newton Center employee permit at the traffic bureau would get this flyer so that they understand the rules. Everyone knows that they're not guaranteed to get a space. They give away way more than 40 permits, right? But it does mean that all 40 of these meters are not going to be, in general, occupied by a commuter going into Boston for the day, and not going to be occupied by, someone maybe doing a 1-hour visit to Newton Center or a 2-hour. They would be at the short-term meters. So it opens up 40 meters, and it gives them better chance for the employees to find a meter. And, we say outright, just because you have a free permit does not mean that you have guaranteed parking. And if you go and you see that there's no parking available at the reserved meters, all the time, 100% of the time, just about, we do have meters available on Center Street, on Lyman Street, Willow Street, long-term meters, just a 5-minute walk from there all the way down to Union Street. So, so this is now in place. It's on the books. It can be expanded through the regular traffic council process in Newton Center, or even to other villages if we think it would work there.
Quick question
yeah.
about this. You said that there's more than 40 permits issued. Do you happen to know, or Sergeant Babcock, do you happen to know how many are issued currently?
I don't know. I don't know if Sergeant Babcock knows, but I know it's way more than 40.
Councilor Grossman, we're up to 52.
Okay, and do they expire? Do people have to come in annually? Like, how do we keep track of somebody who, for example, is not an employee anymore?
I'd have to defer to David Kosis on that one.
Well, I mean, the thing is, what's the advantage of keeping something that's a piece of paper that lets you go and pay to park, right, at the meter, right? So it doesn't seem like a very strong reason to sort of have, everyone who works in Newton Center can get one of those free permits.
Interesting. I mean, I find this totally fascinating because I just observe so many of these spaces empty. So I'm curious about the data around utilization. If I know you've looked at this quite a lot. Do you happen to know?
Yes, I
Or
do.
have a way to describe it? Okay,
Yep.
awesome.
And I didn't look at the chart recently, but we have months and months. There must have been 50 or 60 different observations that we made. And in all cases, every time we went, that we had over 90% of the reserve spaces being used, right?
That's good.
So it's heavily used. We saw that it wasn't as heavily used on Saturdays. So maybe that's something that you saw at one point, that it was very, not well used on Saturdays. So we changed the signs and, we made these spaces available to the public on Saturdays. So I guess if you're in the know, you'll know now that on Saturdays, there are, there's 12 long-term spaces in the Langley lot, and all the rest are short-term.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Wright. Counselor Wright?
Sorry about that. Okay, so, Mr. Kosis, you said these permits in Newton Center are free, and I thought it was on one of your other slides that the business permits were, I don't know, $150 or $250 or something? Or was I not reading that correctly? At one of the other
That's
buildings?
correct. That's correct. That's correct. So it's a different program, and so city council determined that the permits in Auburndale would be $25 a year. There's all sorts of capacity. If you go to Auburndale, to any of those reserved zones, there's a lot of space, right? So you're pretty much guaranteed to have a space in Auburndale. And then
Are those metered spaces or?
those are not metered spaces.
Okay.
It's curb space.
Okay.
And the same thing in Newton Highlands. There's not as many permits available. They're not in big reserved zones like in Auburndale. They're on the individual streets. Lincoln Street, certain number on every street, and you're guaranteed to have a space because we're pretty conservative in terms of how many permits we issue on each street. Now, here in Newton Center, you're not guaranteed a space. You just, we just are trying to help the employees there by opening up some meters to them.
Okay, but they have to pay the meters though.
But you have to pay the meters during the enforcement hours.
Okay.
We have not really, I have not, I don't know if anyone has received complaints about this program in Newton Center. I think the only complaints I've gotten are from commuters who now have fewer long-term spaces available to them in Newton Center to be able to park and use the Newton Center Green Line station. So, when I get those complaints, and there are not even that many that came to me, I usually say that we do have some long-term parking still available in Newton Center, and a lot of, you have a huge empty parking lot at Riverside and a parking garage at Woodland that would probably be a better place for commuters to park to use the Green Line.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kosis, let's move ahead.
Okay. So this is the last slide. We have some other parking permits available that are, have been on the books for a long time. We have something called a temporary parking permit. This is managed by the Traffic Bureau. So this is really almost exclusively used for construction, or for if your driveway is being repaved or something. That if you live on a street that has like a 2-hour limit or a no parking at certain times of day, you can go to the Traffic Bureau and pay $10, and that's for 30 days to be able to park, longer than the posted limit, right? So I think about 130 or so of these temporary permits have been issued so far this year since January 1st. So, something like someone comes in every day to get one of these permits. So it's $10 for 30 days, and then you can come back again and pay $10 again for 30 more days, and then $10 again for 30 more days, up to 90 days. And I understand that usually there's no requests for more than 90 days for these temporary permits. And then we have the senior stickers, right? So this one is managed by the Senior Center. So this is a great program for seniors. For $6 for 2 years, you could get a sticker that would allow you to park for free at any short-term meter in a lot, 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 hour meters, $6 for 2 years, or it's also valid on a portion of Highland Avenue near the Senior Center. So this is very popular. So we're in the second year of a 2-year cycle now. So since last year, since July, so the past year, since July of 2023, the Senior Center has sold 4,400 or so of these senior stickers. So there's a lot of them out there. And then our last one that I wanted to mention is our municipal lot sticker. So these are for the winter parking ban, right? We all know we have the winter overnight parking ban that refers to public streets and private ways and also parking lots, right? So you can't park even in a parking lot overnight in the winter unless you can get a municipal lot sticker. And these are free. This is also managed by the Traffic Bureau. And so usually around, I think, October or November, they start distributing these to people who come in. And I know that they do sell out of the municipal lot stickers in both lots in Nonantum, the Chapel Street and Adam Street lot, but I don't think they sell out in any of the other lots. So that's it. That's the whole presentation. And I guess I could stop sharing.
Okay, wow. Well, that was a tremendous amount of information. So first of all, thank you so much. As always, your preparation is flawless, and being able to have all of that laid out in such detail and with such mastery of all the intricacies of the programs is really impressive, and we're grateful. So thank you. Let me go to the council and let's just open it up for questions. There was a lot there. Welcome anybody's questions as well as feedback as you're noodling on what we heard and thinking about how that dovetails with what we've been talking about as a council. I don't see any hands, no more questions. Okay, Councilor Downs.
I just given a little observation about the specificity of each of these parking programs, each of these parking districts. In a way, in a very small way, we have started as a city to do demand-based or demand response parking programs by you pay the meter at Newton Center. That has got to add up, even a long-term meter. What does that cost, Mr. Kozis? Because the
I'm
sticker's
sorry, you're asking
free.
for the cost of a long-term meter is 50 cents an hour.
50 cents an hour. So if you're there for 6 hours, that's $3, which is, not $25 a year, for instance, as in Auburndale. Newton Highlands pay 200, or the boss pays 200 and they transfer, whereas in Newton Center, they're paying that out of pocket. Which is kind of interesting. We have a temporary permit for homeowners, which lasts for 30 days. Whereas for a whole year in some areas, you can get permit to park on the street for $25. So you're doing multiple renovations. You're going to need to be out for more than 2 months. Obviously, that's what you buy instead. And the guest passes, the giving away of 2 guest passes. I think we might want to noodle a little bit about the cost of parking versus the demand for parking to make sure that we get to the right spot. And I think it will be fairly tailored because you can park out by my house all day, every day, and you won't be competing for, you'll be taking a space that otherwise sits vacant. Whereas if you're right in Newton Highlands, above Woodward Street. There's serious demand for those spaces, and they're parceled out pretty parsimoniously. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Just sort of trying to look at all the different programs, and the Newton Center program I was aware of, and its differences, the Newton Highlands one, but knowing that we also have the Auburndale and Horace Mann and Woburn, and how those all fit together is just really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that Sergeant Babcock has his hand up, so let me come to you and then Counselor Lucas.
Just for clarity, the contractor permits are given to the contractor. The resident says they're doing the driveway over, I'm not gonna charge them a contractor permit. They live at the residence and they're getting, the driveway getting paid. We'll issue them a pass for the number of days that they need. So there is no cost to the homeowner. They're doing a driveway, they have a dumpster in their in their driveway because the dumpster's not allowed on the street. We'll try to work with them, but it's the contractor that is it being asking for the contractor permit for the 30, 60, or 90 days.
Great. Thank you so much for that clarification.
Thank you. Counselor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Kosis, again, thank you for your very detailed and thorough presentation of all the neighborhood parking plans that we have. Real quick, for the Newtonville one, ever since it was created and to the best of your knowledge, has there ever been a street that has been denied entry into the Newtonville parking area?
No, and we know off the bat that you're not even eligible unless you're contiguous to another street that's already in it. So if a street, let's say, I don't know, let's say Madison or Washington Park, if they come and they want to become part of the district, immediately we say that they can't because they're not contiguous, because that is part of the original ordinance.
Okay, all right, yeah, thank you. That's all I wanted to know. And again, thank you for your work on parking around Newton, which is not an easy thing, which I'm sure you know that. So thank you, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't see any other hands, so let me just ask again if anybody has any questions or comments on Mr. Kozis's presentation, or any questions or comments in general on the topic before we conclude for the evening. Okay, I don't see any, so I think we should all just digest this as we
I have a
head to our
quick
next
question.
meeting.
Sorry.
Sure, Councilor Wright, go ahead.
So, if someone wanted to start a new area, like in West Newton, so like I usually can't park in front of my house. And I know there's other streets around in West Newton. Do we go then through the traffic bureau if we wanted to do something like that? Because it's businesses and commuters that are parking on the side streets around West Newton.
Well, we don't have a program in West Newton. I think it would probably start with discussions with the counselors or businesses. I think that we need, before we go down a road of creating something, we need to at least feel pretty confident that we would be solving more problems than we create, right? That we could imagine how a program could work. In West Newton, we went a different route, and recently, you remember, we comprehensively looked at where all the meters were located and looked for places to add more meters further down Washington Street, further up Washington Street, on Watertown Street. So that's what we did for now, and I think we're sort of waiting, I guess, for the Washington Street pilot to be installed. So how would how would a parking district in West Newton begin? I think, we just need to start with discussions and see if anyone can imagine what could work there. Maybe something like in Newton Center, if the issue is employee parking, if they're saying that there's not enough meters in West Newton, maybe we could do something like in Newton Center and reserve some meters in West Newton. I'm not sure, but I think we just begin by talking it through.
Well, the thing is, if you go down that route, most of the meters are on the streets, and I know the businesses wouldn't want to lose those meters to long-term parking. And again, and there's some long-term parking over in the commuter rail. I don't know how much that is being used, but on the side streets, they don't have to pay. Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Maliki?
You're muted.
That's Counselor Maliki. Yep.
Why do I have to unmute twice? That's so weird. I unmute and then I get muted again. Yeah, just a couple of comments. I thought it was kind of funny when I guess Mr. Kozis noted that the spaces in Newton Highlands on Lincoln west of Woodward were sort of going begging because the apparently 3-minute walk was too burdensome for the eligible people. And back when we were discussing the Santander property special permit, the walk shed where the developer was saying would be the available parking spaces was considered to be, I think it was was it a 5-minute or 10-minute walk? But anyway, a lot longer than 3 minutes. Yeah, I agree. West Newton has issues, and I don't know if a parking district is the way to solve it or not. I mean, this came up when we were looking at the item before real property reuse about the spaces adjacent to 25 Chestnut, and noting that we really need more general public parking spaces, not business by business parking spaces. And I can't get my head around yet about how this fascinating presentation, and thank you for the great detail. It's going to be a great resource, I think, these slides, just for anyone, the general public, to refer to if they want to understand all these districts. Not quite sure how it relates to what could be done if the overnight winter parking ban gets repealed. It does suggest to me that every situation is very complicated, and enforcement is going to be an issue in a completely different way for an overnight type situation or parking situation. And as I've said many times, there could be a lot of unintended consequences if the ban is repealed. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions tonight?
The last thing that I would just mention is that all of these programs, they're all posted on the DPW Transportation Division page, right? So anytime there's any change to any of them, a new version is created and posted. So they should all be current.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and thank you for not only the presentation tonight, but also your efforts over the years to address the many challenges presented by parking and the varied needs that we have across all of the different types of people who need access to our city, whether they're people who live here or work here or commute here. I've seen your tremendous work over the years. So thank you so much. I just want to ask the committee if there is someone who would like to make a motion to hold for tonight.
So moved.
Okay, motion to hold by Counselor Downs. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that is held, and that concludes our business for the evening. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great rest of your summer, everyone.
Yep, and we'll see you for the full council next week.